Hello, all of you. We are in a course of reading R.K. Narayan's books. R.K. Narayan was a very eminent author. He has written innumerable books. He has got a very good sense of humor, which is slightly laced and layered all over the place. And you enjoy reading his books because he creates characters and locations which are real life and which reflect the life during his period. He lived during the early 20th century, 1906 onwards. He was born in 1906 in Madras, and his novels are based in an imaginary town called Malgudi, Malgudi. If you look in the map, you will not find a place called Malgudi. This is entirely a creation of his imagination. And he has peopled with this Malgudi with characters created by him and which have been fleshed out in so much depth that you can actually feel them, see them, talk them, enjoy with them, suffer with them and all that. So we already finished one series, a book called Swami and Friends, which was based in Malgudi. It was the story of a boy called Swami, a child who and his school classmates and his adventures. We will be having some more books on Narayan has written many novels based on Swami, with Swami as a central character. We are getting hold of those novels for future editions of this talk. Today we have got a book by name Malgudi Days, which is a collection of short stories by R.K. Narayan, and each story is very short, and it will be very interesting. You will see the amount of description, the details, and the storytelling is so racy and very humorous. What he describes is the way life was in those days. Now, we start with the first story, short story in this book. This is called An Astrologer's Day. I hope you are aware of what is an astrologer. An astrologer is a person who reads horoscopes, who reads the stars and the zodiac, and as per the movement of the stars in the sky and the various planets of the zodiac in the sky, your personal life will be impacted in particular manners. Now, this is a very ancient science of the Hindus, which has very recently, it has always been debunked by the Western scientists, but recently it has been gaining more traction as they realize that it has got intrinsic value. So, as at this time, when in the early 20th century, this astrology was a pseudoscience. It may work, it may not work. So, this man is an astrologer. And this story is about an astrologer's day, a day in his life. Now, it starts. Punctually at midday, he opened his bag and spread out his professional equipment, which consisted of a dozen cowrie shells, a square piece of cloth with obscure mystic charts on it, a notebook, and a bundle of Palmyra writing. He opened his bag. This is the astrologer's equipment. He has got all his wear inside his bag. He opens his bag and takes out his professional equipment. What does it have? It has about a dozen cowrie shells. Cowrie shells are the shells you pick up on the beach, and they are the shells of the little insects which have been living in them, now they are dead. So the shells wash up. These shells are they are very cute looking and very nice to handle, and they got a open face and a closed face. So if they are open and closed, accordingly the readings are different. So these cowrie shells are scattered on the cloth, and it depends upon how they fall, whether face down or face up. They are counted accordingly and read accordingly. So his equipment consisted of a dozen cowrie shells, a square piece of cloth with obscure mystic charts on it. And there was a piece of cloth with various drawings and charts. These are the charts of the astrologer, where he would have laid down the constellations of the zodiac and which month, how, where they move, and accordingly he will be able to say, yes, this thing is moving into this, and moon has gone into this, Venus has gone into this, Mars has gone into this. So accordingly, the reading is so and so. So you got one variable is the cowrie shells, the other variable is the charts, and a bundle of palmyra writing. Palmyra is the plant and the leaf of the plant, which is taken. It is long leaf, so they'll trim it and they'll season it so that it is long lasting. It will last for generations, for thousands of years. And on it is written with special stylus and ink, whatever is the matter. And it is bound by having holes at the end which are tied together so that several palmyra leaves will be all bound into a book, and the book will have a particular content. So the palmyra, he has got a bundle of palmyra writing. So these are his equipment. His forehead was resplendent with sacred ash and vermilion. Sacred ash is the ash which is used in worship of God Shiva. So this sacred ash is then made into a paste and daubed on the forehead as a symbol of worship of Shiva, who is the great god, the Mahadeva. And then on the center of his forehead, he has got a yellow mark. It is the Chandan. His forehead was resplendent with sacred ash and vermilion. So that Chandan is said, and in the center of the Chandan, there is a vermilion, red kumkum dot. So this is the decoration on his forehead, which makes him makes people have a second look at him. He's having a very attractive decoration. And then that's not all. His eyes sparkled with a sharp, abnormal gleam, which was really an outcome of continual searching look for customers. So he had a continuous searching look for customers. He would sit there and he'll be looking for customers, and his eyes were sharp and looking here and there. And any person who looks towards him, he will attract him to come and have his astrology reading done. But which his simple clients took to be a prophetic light and felt comforted. So the passers-by would look at him and say, oh yes, he's a good astrologer, let us go and get our reading done. And they will have the confidence to and the comfort of coming and consulting him. The power of his eyes was considerably enhanced by their position, placed as they were between the painted forehead and the dark whiskers which streamed down his cheeks. So he had whiskers down his cheeks, all plenty of hair, and there was the forehead, and there was all this ash and the yellow chandan and the red vermilion dot and everything, and the face looked very arresting. It would be a face which people would look at a second time, and then they might want to come and consult him. So between the eyes were placed sharp eyes between the two whiskers. Even half-wit's eyes would sparkle in such a setting. To crown the effect, he wound a saffron-colored turban around his head. This turban means the cloth which is wound around the head. It was a saffron-colored turban. So there it is. The man is sitting there, and he has got his whiskers, and his forehead is all having ash and chandan and the vermilion dot, and the the turban, a saffron-colored turban. This color scheme never failed. People were attracted to him as bees are attracted to cosmos or dahlia stalks. He sat under the boughs of a spreading tamarind tree, which flanked a path running through Town Hall Park. Now he has placed him. This is a tree, a huge tamarind tree. Tamarind is a very long-lasting tree. It will grow on. It will be there growing for years and years. And it's very huge. And he has got his place under that tamarind tree. And this tree was flanking a path. There was a path going through the Town Hall Park. This was a Town Hall Park, and there was a path going through that park, and on that path there is the main path through the Town Hall and Town Hall Park, and he was sitting there. That was his seat. People were attracted to him, and he sat under the boughs of a spreading tamarind tree, which flanked the path running through the Town Hall Park. It was a remarkable place in many ways. A surging crowd was always moving up and down this narrow road, morning till night. There was always a crowd because it was the main road. A variety of trades and occupations was represented all along its way. So all people would come congregate along this road. Medicine sellers, sellers of stolen hardware and junk, magicians, and above all, an auctioneer of cheap cloth who created enough din all day to attract the whole town. So there were many people, medicine sellers, sellers of stolen hardware and junk, magicians, and above all, an auctioneer of cheap cloth who created enough din all day to attract the whole town. Next to him in vociferousness came a vendor of fried groundnuts. Now, this he eats. Fried groundnuts are a very favorite item which you buy a little for a small change, and you can be munching the groundnuts for about 20 minutes, and then you feel like you would like to have more. That is the way the groundnuts, fried groundnuts, are attractive. They are very savory, very tasty. He sat under the boughs of a spreading tamarind. Variety of trades. Next to him came a vendor of fried groundnuts who gave his ware a fancy name each day. And that groundnut, one day he'll say it is Bombay ice cream, one day he would say Delhi almond, and on the third day he would say Raja's delicacy, and so on and so forth. And people flocked to him. A considerable portion of this crowd dallied before the astrologer too. So as they passed along, they had this, so many people doing so many things. And they would look at this, look at that, and pass on slowly. There is no hurrying up and hastening. They have the leisure. It was a leisurely town somewhere in the interior of the country. A considerable portion of this crowd dallied before the astrologer too. The astrologer transacted his business by the light of a flare, which crackled and smoked up above the groundnut heap nearby. Half the enchantment of the place was due to the fact that it did not have the benefit of municipal lighting. So, this is inside the park and there is no municipal lighting. So, he had his lamp and the groundnut seller had his light and fire. So, the place was lit up by this. So, half the enchantment was due to the fact that it did not have a benefit of municipal lighting. The place was lit up by shop lights. One or two had hissing gas lights, some had naked flares stuck on poles, some were lit up by old cycle lamps. One or two, like the astrologers, managed without lights of their own. So each one would light his own lamp, either one type or another type. It was bewildering crisscross of light rays and moving shadows. This suited the astrologer very well. So it was not a brightly lit and well set place, it was a dim lit, and the astrologer himself had no light. It was the groundnut vendor next to him and the other vendor on the other side. They had their own lights, and those lights were flickering and throwing shadows and lights, and that suited him very well for the simple reason that he had not in the least intended to be an astrologer when he began life. And he knew no more of what was going to happen to others than he knew what was going to happen to himself next minute. So this astrologer was really a fraud. He didn't know anything about astrology, but he had happened to become an astrologer by circumstances. And he knew as little about astrology and about what would happen to his customer who consulted him as he knew about himself what will happen to him the next minute. He was as much a stranger to the stars as were his innocent customers. Yet he said things which pleased and astonished everyone. That was more a matter of study, practice, and shrewd guesswork. All the same, it was as much an honest man's labor as any other, and he deserved the wages he carried home at the end of a day. So he put in an effort to gather information and knowledge and tactics and techniques and used it so that he could say something appropriate to the customer sitting in front of him, as was needed by him, by the customer at that moment. So for that effort, he would get some earning which he would happily take home. He had left his village without any previous thought or plan. If he had continued there, he would have carried on the work of his forefathers, namely, tilling the land, living, marrying, and ripening in his cornfield and ancestral home. So his forefathers were agriculturists, and they would till the land and they would live there on the land in a hut inside the land, marry and have children, and the corn will ripe over the so many months, and then he would harvest it, sell it, and that was the agriculturist life. But he did not want it, so he left the land and went out of the village, went out of the ancestral home. But that was not to be. He had to leave home without telling anyone, and he could not rest till he left it behind a couple of 100 miles. So now comes some twist in the tale. He had to leave his home without telling anyone, and he had to go away hundreds of miles, some couple of 100 miles, before he could have a little relief. To a villager, it is a great deal, as if an ocean flowed between 200 miles away from his village was far away out of sight, out of mind. Nobody could locate him. It was a village. It was in the early 20th century. He had a working analysis of mankind's troubles. Whatever would happen to a mankind during his life, marriage, money, tangles of human ties, these are the usual troubles of man. Long practice had sharpened his perception. Within 5 minutes, he understood what was wrong. He charged 3 pies per question and never opened his mouth till the other had spoken for at least 10 minutes, which provided him enough stuff for a dozen answers and advices. So his technique was that he would sit, some customer would come, and he would ask him, what is the matter? And allow the customer to talk for 10 minutes at least before he himself would open his mouth. So during that 10 minutes of talk by the customer, he would gather all the information about him and about his problems and what are the possible solutions. And then he could answer. And he charged 3 pies per question. When he told the person before him, gazing at his palm, in many ways, he would then ask the customer to show his palm. He would look at the palm and he would read the palm and he would tell him, in many ways, you are not getting the fullest results of your efforts. 9 out of 10 were disposed to agree with him. In fact, every person would agree that he is not getting the full value for his whatever he is doing. You are not getting the fullest results for your efforts. Or he questioned, is there any woman in your family, maybe even a distant relative, who is not well disposed towards you? Or he gave an analysis of character. Most of your troubles are due to your nature. How can you be otherwise with Saturn where he is? You have an impetuous nature and a rough exterior. This endeared him to their hearts immediately, for even the mildest of us loves to think that he has a forbidding exterior. So he would talk up the customer in such a manner that the customer would be happy to hear what he says. The nuts vendor blew out his flare and rose to go home. This was a signal for the astrologer to bundle up too, since it left him in darkness except for a little shaft of green light which strayed in from somewhere and touched the ground before him. He picked up his cowrie shells and paraphernalia and was putting them back into his bag when the green shaft of light was blotted out. He looked up and saw a man standing before him. He sensed a possible client and said, you look so careworn. It will do you good to sit down for a while and chat with me. The other grumbled some vague reply. The astrologer pressed his invitation, whereupon the other thrust his palm under his nose, saying, you call yourself an astrologer? The astrologer felt challenged and said, tilting the other's palm towards the green shaft of light, yours is a nature. Oh, stop that, said the other. Tell me something worthwhile. Our friend felt piqued. I charge only 3 paise per question, and what you get ought to be good enough for your money. At this, the other withdrew his arm, took out an anna and flung it out to him, saying, I have some questions to ask. If I prove that you are bluffing, you must return that anna to me with interest. Now, 1 anna is 12 paise. This is one of the old monies used in India during the last century. And his charge was 3 pies per question. That means for 12 pies, there could be 4 questions. So he says, you'll have to repay me this 1 anna with interest. If you find my answer satisfactory, will you give me 5 rupees? asked the astrologer. No, said the customer. Or will you give me 8 annas? All right, provided you give me twice as much if you are wrong, said the stranger. The pact was accepted after a little further argument. The astrologer sent up a prayer to heaven as the other lit a cheroot. The astrologer caught a glimpse of his face by the matchlight. There was a pause as cars hooted on the road. Jatka drivers swore at their horses, and the babble of the crowd agitated the semi-darkness of the park. So this was evening time. The groundnut vendor has closed and gone. That's when this customer has come, and he has haggled with the astrologer, and they have agreed. And he was the customer lighted up a cheroot, and that match light gave a glimpse of his face, and there were cars passing, and Jatka drivers. Jatka is the horse-driven or the bullock-driven carts, and the babble of the crowd agitated the semi-darkness of the park. The other sat down, sucking his cheroot, puffing out, sat there ruthlessly. The astrologer felt very uncomfortable. Here, take your Anna back. I'm not used to such challenges. It is late for me today. He made preparations to bundle up. The other held his wrist and said, You can't get out of it now. You dragged me in while I was passing. The astrologer shivered in his grip, and his voice shook and became faint. Leave me today, I'll speak to you tomorrow. The other thrust his palm in his face and said, Challenge is challenge, go on. The astrologer proceeded with his throat drying up. There is a woman. Stop, said the other. I don't want all that. Shall I succeed in my present search or not? Answer this and go. Otherwise, I'll not let you go till you disgorge all your coins. The astrologer muttered a few incantations and replied, All right, I'll speak. But will you give me a rupee if what I say is convincing? Otherwise, I'll not open my mouth, and you may do what you like. After a good deal of haggling, the other agreed. The astrologer said, You were left for dead, am I right? Ah, tell me more. A knife has passed through you once, said the astrologer. Good fellow, he bared his chest to show the scar. What else? And then you were pushed into a well nearby in the field. You were left for dead. I should have been dead if some passer-by had not chanced to peep into the well, exclaimed the other, overwhelmed by enthusiasm. What shall I get when shall I get at him? He asked, clenching his fist. In the next world, answered the astrologer. He died 4 months ago in a far-off town. You will never see any more of him. The other groaned on hearing it. The astrologer proceeded. Guru Nayak, you know my name, said the other, taken back. Or as I know all other things, I know your name also. Guru Nayak, listen carefully to what I have to say. Your village is 2 days' journey due north of this town. Take the next train and be gone. I see once again great danger to your life if you go from home. He took out a pinch of sacred ash and held it out to him. Rub it on your forehead and go home. Never travel southward again, and you will live to be 100. Why should I leave home again? The other asked reflectively. I was only going away now and then to look for him and to choke out his life if I met him. He shook his head regretfully. He has escaped my hands. I hope at least he died as he deserved. Yes, said the astrologer. He was crushed under a lorry. The other looked gratified to hear that. The place was deserted by the time the astrologer picked up his articles and put them into his bag. The green shaft was also gone, leaving the place in darkness and silence. The stranger had gone off into the night after giving the astrologer a handful of coins. It was nearly midnight when the astrologer reached home. His wife was waiting for him at the door and demanded an explanation. He flung the coins at her and said, "Count this. One man gave all that." 12.5 annas, she said, counting. She was overjoyed. "I can buy some jaggery and coconut tomorrow. The child has been asking for sweets for so many days now. I'll prepare some nice stuff for her." "The swine has cheated me. He promised me a rupee," said the astrologer. As a rupee used to be 16 annas, and he has given only 12.5 annas. So the astrologer says, "The swine has cheated me. He promised me a rupee." She looked up at him. "You look worried. What is wrong?" "Nothing." After dinner, sitting on the payal, he told her, "Do you know a great load is gone from me today? I thought I had the blood of a man on my hands all these years. That was the reason why I ran away from home, settled here and married you." "He is alive." She gasped. "You tried to kill?" "Yes, in our village when I was a silly youngster. We drank, gambled and quarreled badly one day. Why think of it now? Time to sleep," he said, yawning, and stretched himself on the payal. So this is the concluding line, which shows that the same man, what is his name? The astrologer. When he was a child, he had pushed his playmate into the well and run away. Then he thought, oh, he has killed that boy, and he has run away from the village, and he has gone far away, 200 miles away, and settled in that village. And because he knew nothing else, he had become an astrologer and put all that his painting and his coloring and his attire, and pretended he knew astrology, whereas he knew nothing. And today that same man had come and he had consulted him and told him the same story. So he knew. So that is the story. It's an interesting story with a very clever turn at the end. I hope you liked it. So we'll continue with the next story on another day. Thank you. Bye-bye.